Steaming on the kitchen table, part 3. What happens when the steam engine is too big for the boiler? Will it run? In this test I am using a Stuart Models 5A. This particular 5A is one that I built a few years ago. I sold it and then the new owner emigrated and I bought it back from him a few years later. It's a really nice engine. It has 2 lubrication systems, one for the trunk guide or the crosshead guides. That is currently disconnected, you can see the piping though. And the other lubricator is a very nice mechanical lubricator that works very well indeed. It's the ratchet type, which is actually my personal preference. They seem to be more reliable. On this model steam engine test plant, fitted to the turret, is a glass lubricator. This is a displacement lubricator and it works very well. So really the mechanical lubricator is not required, but it won't do any harm having a little bit extra steam oil in the cylinder. I lit the boiler via the chimney as previously shown, and this is a new gas tank. The pressure is too high and I had to turn it down. I turned down the pressure for 2 reasons. One was the bad smell emanating from the chimney, and also it's not a good idea to force a boiler. It's better to raise steam gently. It puts less stress on the copper and the silver soldered joints as they expand with the heat. As usual, the first thing to do while the boiler is raising steam is thoroughly lubricate every moving part of the engine. This is lubricating oil and not steam oil. The steam oil is for the cylinders, but if any parts of the engine get really hot, occasionally I will use steam oil to lubricate the hot parts of the engine. This engine has a couple of novel features, one of them being the crosshead lubricator, which is a small hand pump that pumps oil up to the crossheads at each side. This oil ends up on top of the crosshead, then it runs down 2 holes in the top of the crosshead, which connect to a central hole in the connecting rod, which in turn supplies oil to the big end. Now that the boiler is getting quite hot, I thought it was a good idea to increase the gas pressure. And because the boiler was hot, the bad incomplete combustion smell had disappeared. At this stage, I opened the valve into the engine because I wanted to warm that up first. The general rule is the larger the engine, the more low pressure steam you need to admit to the cylinder to warm it up. Here I'm making a slight modification. I need the exhaust to end up in the plastic bowl, not all over my kitchen table. This is actually an exhaust pipe from one of my Sirius engines wrapped in masking tape to make it a good fit in the exhaust pipe of the 5A. With only 25 pounds of steam pressure showing on the gauge, I opened the valve fully. And it took a while to start because there wasn't enough pressure to hold the slide valve onto the port face. This is going to be quite tricky. The water gauge shows the boiler to be about half full. Here I'm topping up the water using the injector, which is still very touchy. I'm going to change the tap. I think the tap is too small. I'll try changing it for a proper injector water valve, which works in a different way. It was working quite well until the tank ran out of water, but now at least there's quite a lot of water in the boiler. Now I need to let some time elapse for the temperature of the water to go back up again. With just under 50 pounds per square inch showing on the pressure gauge, I open the regulator and the engine's running again. As usual, I'll stop talking when the engine's running. The engine has been running in reverse. Here I've dropped the lever and it's now running in forward direction. And as Alexander Carnes explained to me on my Titch locomotive, this was the wrong way round. And he explained that the lever always goes to the bottom to go forward, because if the linkages break, that's where it will end up. Even though this boiler is 6 inches in diameter, it's not very long. It's a water tube boiler and it's gas fired. In my opinion, the boiler bushes are too small, the taps are too small and the piping is too small, but having said all that, as you can see, it does work. Take a look at this video I made a while ago. This clip shows just how good this boiler is. Its working pressure is 100 pounds per square inch, it's blowing off, the engine's really running fast. These 4-way chime whistles are quite big and they use a lot of steam. And as you can see, the pressure is held at 100 pounds per square inch all the time. And it's starting to blow off again. That is a much larger boiler, it's coal fired and it's a fire tube boiler. This one I'm working with is a twin flue water tube gas fired boiler and it works well. When I run the 5A engine slowly, as I've just shown, the steam pressure rises to about 50 pounds per square inch but doesn't blow off, as the working pressure is 60 pounds per square inch. Maybe if I notch back the engine it will use less steam, and yes it did, but it got a bit lumpy. I do admit this is a very unfair test of the boiler plant. It's not designed for such a big engine. But as you can see, it works, the 5A is rotating and the boiler's holding pressure. I'll open the regulator valve a bit more. This really is a very unfair test of this boiler. Because of the very small bore piping, I have to open the steam regulator valve very quickly to let enough steam into the steam chest to slam the slide valve against the port face. Some viewers may be wondering why this is, so I'll quickly explain while I'm showing an image of how low the water's getting. If, for instance, I was using this steam engine in some sort of a locomotive, I would want it to freewheel when I turned the steam off, which it does. When the steam is turned off, the slide valve moves away from the port and there is no pumping action through the cylinders. Time to stop talking again as the steam test reaches its inevitable conclusion. In this final clip, I'd turned the gas off, and then, once the engine stopped, I shut all the valves, and when the steam disappeared within the boiler, the subsequent vacuum sucked in some water from the lower water tank. So it's all ready for the next steam run. The kitchen table is a bit of a mess, it's covered in steam, oil and water, so I'll give it a good clean using a piece of kitchen roll. My kitchen table is not very good quality and positively rustic, so the oil makes it look better. For the final part of the video, I removed the engine from the table, put it on the workbench and squirted in some WD-40 followed by steam oil. Then I ran it using my air line. As you can see, it's still hot because it's steaming. This Stuart 5A took quite a lot of air and the compressor switched in to pump itself up again. That's it for this one. Stay safe, stay healthy. Thanks for watching and I hope you found it useful. please take the time to visit my main Steam Models website and click on the section of the website that says Video Playlists. And by doing that, you can find other videos that you may like to watch. And by using the playlists, you can actually watch the videos back to back.